are you, sir?
How we doing?
Good, good.
Good.
So 3 days in and I guess a couple months of the off season, what are your impressions of your group so far?
It's exciting. It's a bunch of new faces, and then you got some guys that I believe that are returning from last year that have gained a lot of experience. Rather playing or practicing the way that we practice and executing the way that we want to execute, and what we demand on a daily basis. So it's exciting because you have a lot of new faces that are going really hard. You got a lot of guys coming back that understand how to play the game now the right way, and it's a good little combination.
What are you hoping? What do you need the freshmen to learn to gain through spring ball?
Well, I think we recruited every single one of them because of their talent, right? And so, the first thing that always goes is things slow down. They slow down, a lot of thinking going on. And then their skill set and their talent kind of doesn't show right away. And a lot of that's just really becoming comfortable, right? And so we've challenged these guys a lot over the last 6 weeks since we really kind of been doing all this stuff of trying to get these guys to understand what their assignments are, understand how to get lined up, or understand how to line up, and then execute and perform the details that we're asking them to do in regards to the routes that we're asking them to run. So, when you look at it collectively, all of them have taken a deep breath over the last 6 weeks. They've all gotten in. They've been, Coach Day does a phenomenal job in our weight program to get guys acclimated because it's rigorous, it's demanding, and it's structured, and it's kind of like playing the game. And so they've all responded very well to that, and that's helped them be ready for spring ball. And what these guys have shown over the first 3 days, I've been very impressed.
I know it's early, but Mike Shula said yesterday that he wants to incorporate the pass game into the offense a little more, so Lenoris Sellers can run when he wants to rather than when he has to. How is those conversations that kind of get the pass game more into the offense look like, and how do you see these receivers fitting into that?
Yeah, well, I think it's really just analyzing your talent, right? Seeing what you have. Obviously last year we had a heck of a running back in Rocket, and in the beginning of the season, like everybody was trying to figure out what kind of quarterback Lenoris was going to be, and we didn't have any weapons really on the outside that had proven themselves, right? And the guy that was probably the most consistent in regards to production, was Rocket Sanders, and what we did with him and what we asked him to do, especially early on last year, obviously helped us win a lot of football games. But now I think when you look at the whole picture of the returning guys that I mentioned, what they look like now with experience, Masio and Nick Harbor and Jared Brown and Vendravius Jacobs, the 4 guys that are coming back that have a lot of experience now, they're completely different players. And that's part of the excitement of the guys. They're completely different players. And then you bring the talent in of the young guys that can run, and they're super talented. And I think so now you're not going to have to be so one-dimensional, right? And I think that's where all the excitement's coming from, or at least the thought process now is we don't have to rely on one thing. Collectively as an entire offense now, you better be able to defend everything. And I think that's the best part about an offense that you want to kind of design, right? And I think we're in that situation hopefully by the end of spring.
Aside from the production, which we could all see with Nick towards the end of last season, what are some of the things that maybe we don't see that makes him a completely different player?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is maturity, right? And I without getting too much into it, and Nick can speak a lot about it on his own when he talks to you guys. But I think when you look at a Nick Harbor, I think everybody's expectations for Nick exceeded what his expectations were because he was so inexperienced at playing the position. And, but when you look at his body size, you would just assume that he would be able to go out there and just, dominate every game and every situation. Well, there's a lot that goes on to play wide out. I mean, it's not just running. I mean, you got to run as fast as you can. You got to get in and out of transitions. You got to be able to snap your head around. You got to be able to catch the ball when it's in flight, and you better be able to catch that ball while you're running 100 miles an hour after, at that ball. There's a lot that goes on, and he just hadn't at that time really experienced a lot of that stuff, right? It was all just speculation. And I think now the biggest thing for Nick that we're all excited about, including himself, is he's caught balls in games. He's went and got footballs. We've relied on him on some past stuff last year, and I think towards the end of the season, the touchdown against the Missouri, I think it was, or the ball he caught over the shoulder against Missouri, and then the touchdown coming back against Akron or whatnot, and kind of starting to get in the flow of things. That builds confidence, right? And I think the more and more he becomes confident with himself, the more and more we'll start exceeding our expectations of what we think of Nick Harbor. And I think the other thing too for Nick, I think the best thing about Nick is, I told Nick this the other day, the best thing that ever could happen to Nick is these six freshmen that are coming in. Because they don't, they're going to come in here and just do everything they can and do it right and do it as fast as they can, and he's going to be able to learn from them a little bit too, of how you're supposed to do stuff and see it the right way, and then be able to go out and emulate that also and add that to his game. And so it's kind of hand in hand with him coming back with experience, and then the new guys coming in that are going to be able to push him. And he's had 3 really good days here at spring.
What were the conversations like, whenever it was, with Jordan and Donovan to get them to reclassify and to feel comfortable enough to say, hey, we're okay if you come in a year early? When did those start, and what were those conversations with the families like?
Yeah, well, the biggest thing was we let that happen on its own, right? We didn't force any of that. We didn't want to do anything where we ruined any relationship with any high school coaches taking a kid from their senior year and that they were relying on and playing. And so both of those situations was family driven. It was their personal decision. And then we said if that were the case, then obviously then what we'll do is then we'll start looking into it, and then we'll start providing, obviously the details of what that looks like and how we can get that done and how we can help you get that done. And I think both of them, when you look at them, they belong in college, right? Their physicality, their size, their speed, their body type. You just don't see a lot of kids like that really in college, let alone going to be seniors in high school, or really their spring of their junior year in high school. And so both of them physically were ready to play, or at least ready to get to college. I think when you look at all their production in high school, especially when you look at Murph's situation, obviously AJ was there and they had a heck of a career, his senior year, AJ's senior year, they go to the state championship game. There's a lot of things that Murph accomplished, being all state and getting invited to the Under Armour game. And, there's a lot of things he's already accomplished, right? And so really like what's next, when you look at those things. And so a lot of that stuff that was all taken into consideration, and we thought that they were both ready to play. And so we continued to pursue it and flipped them over to be, obviously early enrollees and graduate early. And we're excited now that Jordan's here, which is even crazier to think that he really should be in his junior year, in the spring of his junior year. But it's awesome that he's here now, and it'll be great in May when Murph shows up.
After his freshman season, what's the next step for Masio Bennett after what he was able to accomplish as a freshman?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I think when you look at our group, the guy in our room that has made the biggest strides physically, and a lot of it has to do with just his body maturing, is Masio Bennett. I think when you look at Masio, his numbers are all down in speed, his quickness, his shiftiness, it's all down. Masio is a really, really smart player, and I think one of the kryptonites to Masio was that he was so passionate about the game that he became so emotionally attached to failure and or not being able to do stuff. And so a lot of that stuff would catch up to him last year because he knew he could do it and he wanted to do it, but he just wasn't doing it yet. And it's a transition period, right? But that young man has taken our tips of what we wanted him to accomplish this offseason. And Masio Bennett ran some routes today that Masio Bennett wouldn't do last year at this time. And but what he's doing now was what a lot of people can't do, and it's impressive. And so that was the biggest challenge to him, was getting his body right, trimming up, losing some of the baby sense that he has, that kids have when they come in while they're still maturing, and put on some muscle mass and get faster and have more confidence in his speed, and he's done that. So he's been really, really impressive over the last 3 days. Now, don't tell him I said that, because he's an emotional. He rides that motion, right, a little bit. But Masio is a special player, and I know this place means a lot to him too because of just being down the road. That's why he came here, right? I mean, South Carolina kid. He wanted to be at South Carolina. He loves South Carolina, and he wanted to do so much his freshman year for South Carolina. And a lot of those things don't happen because you're just lack of experience, or you just got a lot of grow. You got to grow a little bit, And so what he's done over the last 6-7 weeks has been really impressive.
And that third veteran guy you mentioned with Jared Brown, what have you seen from him?
Yeah, I believe Jared is a super talented guy that he just wants to do everything. He's a big pleaser, right? He wants to do everything the right way. And when you come from Coastal to South Carolina last year, he would tell you this too. I don't think his game was really devoted to be around an outside wideout, right? It was always the knick-knack stuff and being used as a gadget type of guy. And sometimes you can get stuck with that, right? And then now all of a sudden when you go somewhere, it's like, can you really become a wideout, or are you just a gadget guy? Well, gadget guys are hard to play now because every time you go in the game, everybody knows you're running some type of gadget with him. It's a bubble screen or an option or something like that he did at his previous school. But so our challenge to Jared Brown this offseason was to develop as a wideout, right? Develop your releases, develop your stems, work on your transitions, understand how to get to catch points, just not rely on your talent because you're super talented. And don't rely on just the fact that you're a gadget player. Jared Brown has the ability and the skill set to become a really, really good wide receiver. And so that was kind of our focus this offseason. And he's done a really good job working on it. And what he's done really over the last 2 or 3 days, actually, I just was watching film before I came in here, some of the routes that he's learning to run from day 1 to day 3. You could see a natural route runner in there, and that all continues to grow throughout spring. So again, I've been impressed with him also. So when you look at those 3 guys and Vendravius Jacobs, who come from Florida State, kind of really trying to figure out a role, super talented, just not very consistent. Right, and something that he wanted to work on and become more reliable and trustworthy, and he's earned a lot of that stuff also over the last 6-7 weeks. So again, like I said, it's an exciting group that's coming back with those 4 guys outside of the other couple guys that are in there, and put the mix of the young guys in there. It's a pretty cool, quietly competitive room because they all know they can play ball, and that'll make our room better.
You did a pretty rare thing for 2024-25 and not take a wide receiver from the transfer portal this class. How much of that was, hey, I just love these freshmen coming in, and at any point, was there a little fear of like, man, we're putting a lot of eggs into a very young basket?
It's a lot of conversations went into that going into the off season, and obviously when the portal opened and everybody started getting in the portal, you always looked at it just to kind of see the guys that were getting in, and obviously, and the other thing too, to be honest with you, you come off the season that we had, and you got the quarterback that we have. There's a lot of people that were interested in coming to South Carolina that we really needed to probably take a look at to make our team better. And the more and more that we did that, the conversations obviously led by Coach Beamer. The conversations were, we didn't want to take away from the guys that are coming back that we knew have developed. Knew we had the 6 wideouts coming in, so we didn't want to bring in somebody that was going to take reps away from them that would allow them to grow. But at the same time, we didn't want to miss on something maybe that, kid that wanted to be here at South Carolina, wanted to come here and help this football team win. It was really, really important for him to be here and be part of this offense. There was a lot of boxes that was really just outside of talent. A lot of those guys get in the portal, they're very talented. But at the same time, your characteristics and your mindset and your goals have to kind of align with what our goals are as a program. And the more and more we kind of did that, would have been okay to grab a guy that maybe had 1 year left. Obviously that would have been good for experience in the room. But at the same time, is your mission to come here and help South Carolina win a lot of football games, or are you doing it selfishly? And so there were a lot of things that we had to make sure we protected our program from. And in the end, it really was just stick with what we believed we have coming back And it's my job as a wide receiver coach to develop the guys coming back. And we had enough trust in, the guys coming in. And I told Coach Beamer, that's my job to make sure these young freshmen are where we want them to be. And that's why we recruited them. And so we ended up making that decision that we weren't going to bring anybody into that room.
Between Brian Rowe and Lex and you mentioned Jordan and Malik, all those guys have like pretty ridiculous traits.
Yeah.
So how do you try to like hone in those skills? And I guess it kind of probably goes back to what you're saying about Nick with his speed, but how do you try to hone that in and get them to develop as players, not guys who can just run and jump really high?
Yeah, and you really just hit the head, hit the nail on the head there when you speak about you have to identify their strengths, and you got to put them in positions to allow their strengths just to be able to take over and not give them too much. And there's guys here that are really, really smart football players. They're savvy. They have a really good understanding. So yeah, we can move them around to maybe some multiple positions. Some guys are more just let me just lock in and do my job and feel comfortable so I can go out and just play. And so we kind of identify them and leave them at one position for right now so they can get their feet underneath them. But the biggest thing, as you said, was to identify their strengths. They all have a lot of things in common. They all have the ball skills. They have the big catch radius. I would say that all of them can run pretty good. Every one of them can run pretty good. Bezo's, Brian Rowe's, pretty explosive. When you look at a 41-inch vert, I think he had maybe this past 2 weeks ago, and then Lex Cyrus gets in there and breaks the school record for vertical. I haven't even stepped on the field yet. And so now you start talking about the short area quickness to compare it to a Nick Harbor, where hey, let's get Nick on the run a little bit, but hey, those guys can just line up and you can't catch them. And so just identifying their skill sets. Which is, you add Murph into this category here coming up in May. It'll be fun to kind of see how they all kind of play out with each other and how they all line up. And when you walk off the practice field, you kind of got to go in your office right away so you can go watch these guys run around a little bit. It's pretty impressive, and it's a lot of fun. And there's a lot of coaching and a lot of teaching that still has to be done. But at the same time, I think the word talented is going to be mentioned a lot with that group, and they're super talented. Obviously, that's why we wanted them here, and that's why we worked our tails off to recruit them to get them all here. And but they've so far have checked that box. So a lot of work left. I mean, these kids, they're still kids. I mean, like you said, 2 of them are still juniors in high school, and 4 of them are should still be in high school as seniors, going to prom here in a couple weeks, but. At the same time, maturity, right? Some of them are a little more mature than others. Some of them still think they can do something that they can't do yet because they just haven't experienced it. But some guys have shocked you. Some guys have come here that with the mentality that I didn't think that they kind of had a little, maybe a little bit, but just didn't see it consistently. And then all of a sudden you get out there and practice, and you're just kind of like, I texted one of the coaches yesterday that he's a completely different player mentally. Than I expected. Not that it was bad. It was just I didn't think he would be as alert and focused and locked in and on a daily basis. And so, it's been neat. Thank you, Coach. Appreciate it, guys.